Good afternoon. Welcome to the Glendale Water and Power Commission meeting. Today is June 30th, 2014. I am filling in for President Hugh Yao as he is on leave. Can we please have roll call?
Yes, and before I proceed with roll call, Commissioner Jimian will not be attending tonight's meeting as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Camargo?
Here.
Commissioner Chan?
Present.
Commissioner Hale?
Here.
Next item, please.
2 consent items. A, approval of the April 5th, 2014 meeting minutes.
May and June, right?
Yes.
Okay. For May, Commissioners Camargo and Commissioner Gale, they were not here. I was here, and I'm okay with these minutes. Can we go ahead and approve them?
Commissioner Chan, yes. Even those members of the commission that were not present may still approve the minutes.
Okay, great. Okay, then I don't think we have any questions or issues with both months. We're going to go ahead and approve them. Okay. Yes.
3, GWP Commission staff comments.
I do want to mention that fortunately, I was able to make one of the rate meeting, and I understand that was the last one, and it went very well. I was very impressed. Congratulations on really great meetings, and I witnessed there were a lot of questions and answers, and the presentation was done very well, concise. So I just want to thank you and your staff for your hard work.
Actually, all three of you attended a meeting. Some of you got a little larger crowd than the others, but
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item.
4 action items. A, GWP Commission elections for President and Secretary.
Okay, we're going to open it up.
I'd like to forward a slate for nominations, 2 nominations. So for Secretary, I would like to nominate Mr. Hale. And as President, I'd like to nominate Ms. Yao. Chen. That's what I said, Chen.
Does that require a second?
No, it does not.
So we just close the nominations now,
Are
right?
there any other nominations?
No.
No? Okay, then nominations may be closed.
Okay, nominations closed. Do we need to accept one at a time, or we can just go ahead and announce?
So what, well, I guess formally, seems silly, doesn't it? But I guess we should have a vote. So let's have a vote for the secretary.
Okay.
So all those in favor of Commissioner Hale for secretary, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so congratulations, Commissioner Hale, on your appointment. Okay, now we'll have the election for president. So all those in favor of Commissioner Chan for president, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Congratulations, Commissioner Chan.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, so we're done. Next item, please.
4B, legislative bills, SCAPA list.
Silva is going to come up and give you a brief overview of where we're at, an update from our last meeting as well. Silva, it is all yours.
Good afternoon, President Chan and members of the Commission. My name is Silva Urulian, and I'm the Community Outreach Associate for Glendale Water and Power. I'm here to give you an update on the legislative issues. At the beginning of the month, we provided the Commission with a list of bills that listed SCAPA's positions, and today I've given the Commission the updated version of that list, which you should have in front of you. And currently there are only 4 bills that SCAPA has taken a position on. This is what it looks like. I don't know if you... the first one is AB 1782, unlawful wire removal, and under the existing law, it's a crime for any person to unlawfully and maliciously take down, remove, injure, or obstruct any line of telegraph, telephone, or cable television, or any other line used to conduct electricity, and a violation of these provisions is punishable by imprisonment in county jail or by a fine not to exceed $500. And this bill would increase the specified fine to an amount not to exceed $10,000 per incident. The second bill is AB 2145, the Community Choice Aggregation opt-in requirement. SCAPA's position is opposed on that bill, and this bill proposes to eliminate competition and consumer choice by shifting the default service from community choice aggregators and place it with the investor-owned utilities, IOUs, therefore disallowing any opportunity for competition. Placing the default with IOUs would prevent new community choice aggregators programs from forming and consequently prevent opportunities for consumer choice. This bill wouldn't directly affect the city of Glendale, but we are still with SCAPA's position on their opposition overall. The third bill is AB 2188 regarding expedited solar permitting by cities, and that bill is also being, their position is also to oppose. And as we discussed at the last commission meeting, this bill would require a city to adopt on or before September 30th an ordinance that creates an expedited and streamlined permitting process for small residential rooftop solar energy systems. The expedited review would have to be within 5 days of any request, and a notice of opposition on behalf of the city of Glendale was mailed to Assemblymember Murasuchi on June 24th, 2014, as requested by the commission, and I've also provided you with a copy of the letter that we mailed. The last bill is AB 2414 regarding electric vehicle charging facilities, which are not a gift of public funds, and SCAPA is supporting this bill. The California Constitution generally prohibits the making of any public money or the making of a gift of any public money or thing of value. So this bill would specify that the use of electricity by government entities, state officers and employees or other persons for charging of an electric vehicle is not a gift of public funds. That is prohibited by the state constitution. And we're requesting today that your support on all of these positions.
I have a question on
Yes.
2188. I remember missing one or two meetings for the last 6 months. With this one, can you explain to me why we would oppose this?
Madam President, let me interject here, and you'll notice, of course, you know, SCAPA is a group of other cities. Mm-hmm. Keeping in mind that the GWP is just one component of the city and a member of the city. We feel, as the other cities feel, that the greater safety and security of the community is not best served by this bill, and that a proper and thorough regular process through the Building and Safety Department to obtain your building permits is what's in the best interest. We would not sacrifice that to try to expedite a solar project. We think that we can work with Building and Safety to get these projects moved through as quickly as possible, but to be tied to a specific time frame. And we don't think that that is in the best interest of the resident installing it, or the residents surrounding them, or the future owners of that facility. So it's pretty unanimous feeling in the municipal community that it's in the greater interest of the community and the city to not support this. As much as we want to encourage solar development, this is not what we think is the proper way to do it.
So majority of the utilities?
Yes, ma'am.
SCAPA?
Yes, ma'am.
Felt the same way? Okay.
And I would add that the likely effect of this is, if it were to pass, would be to have a default no for most permits until they're remedied, and probably increase delays in the act of getting these facilities sited, because you're not going to, no building and safety department at any city is going to allow for an unsafe structure to be constructed.
That's a very good point.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much for the update.
So this was agendized as an action item, so if you wish to do so, you can make a recommendation to the city manager that the city adopt the positions as described, and I think there were 4 bills specifically that were described to you in detail. So if you'd like to do so, you may make a motion to recommend that. If you don't want to, that's okay too.
I actually have a question on the Ting Bill 2414. I assume the bill simply declares as a matter of statute that the EV charging stations are not a gift of public funds, but is that something likely to be tested? I mean, it would seem to me that some intrepid potential plaintiff would sue a city to determine whether they were in fact a gift of public funds or not, and would that be, is that consistent with the constitutional definition?
A gift of public funds, the way it's defined in the Constitution, it's subject to the circumstances. So you'd have to look at what all the factors are, what the facts of that circumstance are. I don't know that there's any threat that I'm aware of that somebody's intending to sue. I don't know, perhaps, Silva, you're aware of
Not that we
something that
know
prompted
of,
this
but
legislation, but it's always a
it's
possibility.
not out of the realm of possibilities
Yeah,
in this day and age.
I readily admit that it's kind of an esoteric question, but, if it goes into effect and then suddenly free electricity is granted for EV car chargers, a non-EV car owner would sue and say, well, that's like giving free gas.
Absolutely.
So I would actually move that we adopt the support position for 1782, the opposed position for 2145, and the opposed position for 2188. Although I think that's redundant since we've already acted on 2188. But I would hold off on 2414.
Is there a second?
That sounds like a good plan to me. Yeah,
Is there
I'm
a
okay
second
with
for
that.
that motion?
Mhm. Can we do that? Yeah.
So is there a second? We need a second, someone other than the chair. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Silva.
Okay. Next item, please.
4, the water rate plan.
Madam President, members of the commission, we can get our PowerPoint up and start rolling here. We had previously come to you to give you essentially what was the overview of the revised COSA, the cost of service analysis, and talked a little bit about where we might be going with the rate structure and the revenue plan, although we hadn't finalized or confirmed any of that with council. Since then, of course, we have done that, at least in regards to putting out the Proposition 218 notice. So today we're back to you after having gone out to the public, as President Chan indicated, and giving you what we've put in the 218 proposal, the reasons why, and then open it up for any discussion you might have. And we also have some other options if you desire to look at those. So the proposed revenue plan, which would be in effect on September 1st, 2014, is a 4-year plan, 5% the first year, and then 3 consecutive years of 4%. That 5% increase, as indicated here, is essentially the last year of the previously approved rate plan, which was a 2245, and that was due to become effective on January 1st. We're just asking that be moved up to September 1st, but be incorporated into the new plan, and then adding 3 years, as I said, 3 consecutive years of 4% each year. Those 4% increases would then go into effect every July 1st for that 3-year period. The compounded increases affect classes differently, and as we talked about, at any time, if you stop me and I'll go back, we had talked about the fundamental issues with the COSA, what the COSA essentially is required to do, which is to set up cost of service analysis in relation to the classes to ensure that there is no one class paying more than their cost of service to provide the water to them. In other words, that a single family is not subsidizing a multifamily, vice versa, or a commercial subsidizing a single family. But when you take this 5444 and compound it over the life of the plan, you see the one issue there is a dramatic decrease in the fire line charges. And as you recall, that was one of the 2 issues. One was the COSA and the rate structure was flawed, primarily as a result of using the wrong data or using bi-monthly data, extrapolating that as monthly data. The second thing was that we significantly overcharged the fire line customers. So in this particular scenario, we'll show you that those fire line charges have been altered dramatically. And again, all 3 of you have attended a public meeting, so you have seen that firsthand. So that first number there is a 65% decrease for fire line customers. And then the next 2 categories are where we had the primary under collection of revenue. And so the flawed structure and the flawed tiering impacted both single and multifamily primarily to their benefit. So in this revenue plan, you're going to see nearly a 30% increase for single family over the 4 years, 35.1 for multifamily, and then you get a 23.7 for commercial and 16.8 for our irrigation. With the proposed revenue increases, GWP water bills still compare very favorably with our surrounding utilities. We're in the middle to the lower end of the scale. Burbank, as you may be aware, just approved a 4.75% increase after several discussions, and that will go into effect July 1. Our neighbor to the north, Crescenta Valley Water District, approved a 5.8% increase. And what we hear from staff at LADWP is they will be proposing a 2-year with 5% each year. And I don't believe that has gone through any vetting process yet, but that's what staff is telling us they're proposing. This is what it looks like. This is, again, there's some redundancy here because you have seen these. This is what we call our typical single family with a 3/4-inch meter using just under 20 HCF a month. And you see where we are in relation to our neighbors and where we will be with the proposed increases, and that also includes the proposed increases at the other utilities. So in this particular case for the single-family model, we're in the middle, and we continue to remain right there with Pasadena and Burbank below us, CVWD and LA quite a bit higher than we are. In Pasadena, we don't know. We still don't know if they're going to do anything with their water. They just haven't said much about that. The typical multifamily, here we are. We are actually towards the lower end of that, even with our increase, or excuse me, proposed increase. We remain towards the bottom of this. Only Burbank is lower, and the other 3 utilities higher. And again, the reasons for the proposed revenue adjustments. Willdan's analysis erroneously used bi-monthly data to design a monthly tiered rate schedule. Single-family customers are paying an average of $5.37 less per month than originally planned, and that's resulted in an undercollection there of $2.4 million. Even more significant on the multifamily side, they're paying an average of $44.36 less per month than the originally planned projections on the tier from Willdan had expected, and that's resulted in an undercollection of $6.2 million. This is what we call the bill impacts due to the air. This is, again, that typical single-family home. You see the 2010, 2011, so that was the rate before the new rate, the 2011-2012 rate increase went into effect. Green is what they're actually paying. Red or burnt orange, whatever that color is from here, forgive me, is what they should have been paying under our projected COSA and rate structure that was done by Willdan. So you can see as it continues to go up, proposed when that last 5% goes into effect, and the percentage will be nearly the same, but consistently paying, as it said, a little over $5 less than what we had projected. Here's that multifamily. It's even more dramatic here. You can see before the rate increase went into effect what they were paying on the far left. And even if we went all the way to the 5% proposed under this rate structure, they'd just barely be paying more than they were. So they would have withstood 4 years of rate increases and only been paying just a few cents more than they had been before. I think this, more than anything, highlights how flawed this analysis and the resulting structure has been. And again, the rate design did not collect projected revenues at tiers 3, 4, and 5 for single-family customers due to the miscalculation. As we had said before, our water sales was actually higher than we had projected. We've been pretty conservative in the sales, but even that couldn't put a dent in this because the tiers were so flawed. Similarly, the multifamily customers at tiers 2 and 3 were undercollected. And again, the Fireline customers were overcharged about $3.4 million as a result of using the incorrect number of customers. As we mentioned, they had taken approximately 300 customers and applied the cost of service, when in effect we went back and basically hand counted, and we have more like 1,100. And that's really where the core of the problem is.
So, Steve, how did staff discover the error? Because it seems like we've had 3 years of collection on this. Was it just the accumulation of the revenue data that led to the
Exactly.
discovery?
Mr. Bell, who's sitting in the audience out there, came to us and said, look, I'm looking at the revenue, and it's not coming in the way it should. And at the same time, he indicated, but the water sales are up, and we're collecting a ton of money on the fire lines, which was kind of skewing things when you looked at it. But when Mike dug deeper into it, tried to coordinate with Wildan and get some feedback from them, and they were very reluctant, as you can imagine. But finally, when we ran that thing to ground, it was pretty clear that we had a flawed structure. And at one point, Wildan did admit that the structure had been set up wrong, and then pretty much communication ended at that point with them, as you can imagine.
So there's like 1,100, you mentioned?
There's about 1,100, Ramon,
fire line customers?
Yeah, so we spread the cost over 300, and you can see that. And here, this is, you can't get any more visually graphic than this. 2010-11, before the rates went into effect, this is the 4-inch fire line charge. This is the most prevalent size line of our customers. It was just $39, just a little over $39, jumping to that $116, $187, then in $202 for that same 4-inch customer in that third year of the rate increase, which is at that point in January of 2014, administratively and with the support of council, we suspended the fire line bills. It was, I mean, there was no question whatsoever. It was flawed. It was necessary for us to stop it there, which is really when we started to move aggressively towards redoing the whole COSA and examining the entire structure. Then you'll see in blue, those are the proposed 4-year rates under the revenue plan that we showed you tonight, the 5 with 3 consecutive 4s. Even at the highest level there, that 4th year, they're still paying less than they did before the first rate increase in 11 and 12. So this was really fouled up.
So when that happened, when the first increase came in, 11 and 12, none of the 1,100 customers complained?
Oh, I would say virtually all of the 1,100.
All of them complained.
I mean, we came under fire on this.
Yeah, we should have.
But as you may recall, at the time that the 11-12 rate increase was being discussed amongst council and the community, there was tremendous concern on the part, led primarily by the Chamber of Commerce, that something wasn't right with that proposed rate. They were very vocal. If I recall, again, I wasn't here, but Christine, I think they even backed up a little bit. They delayed pushing forward with the rate increase until they had time to talk about it a little bit more. At the end of it, they felt they were justified, that it was there, and that all of the cost of service was accurate. But, oh, absolutely. Ms. Valle will tell you. She probably has heard hundreds of complaints, literally almost every month as it came in. And I'm not exaggerating. It was a tremendous impact to these folks.
Wow. Well, the moral of the story is when there's such a huge increase, they have to complain, and then we have to really, really look at the structure closely.
That is absolutely something that everybody in this room knows is a lesson learned.
Right.
Unfortunately, the folks not in this room didn't heed that warning. So the proposed changes, in addition to what we showed you for the proposed revenue plan, is that we need to fix the COSA, first and foremost. Again, this is going over old ground with you because we had that presentation. So first and foremost, we don't have any choice. We have to fix that by law. Included in the new COSA is we reduced the number of tiers, went from 5 to 4 in single family and 3 to 2 in multifamily. We just felt there was too many tiers. That was complicating it. I think this is going to serve us just as well. We even looked at going to less tiers, but I think this will be good. I think the keeping 4 tiers in single family too, especially, allows for that. When we're in non-mandatory conservation, gives an incentive to not use as much water. We adjusted the meter ratio to use meter specification. This is essentially matching the meters up appropriately. And of course, we corrected the fire line calculations and adjusted those rates. Converted monthly customer charge to daily customer charge to simplify pro rata building, pro rating on our billing. That's better for the customer coming in who just has a few days. So instead of having to pay the remainder They'll just pay for that period of time that on the prorating. We are proposing to reduce the recycled water rate discount from 25 to 15. Our analysis shows that it is pretty much industry standard, around 10% discount. We didn't want to go all the way down to that. We think that we're comfortable with 15. In our COSA analysis, I think everybody is comfortable that that kind of a discount is okay in relation, going back to what I said before about making sure that no one class is subsidizing another. So we feel very confident there. We simplified our water rate adjustment. This is the adjustment we use that essentially it allows us to adjust the rates 2 times a year to accommodate either and or a MWD rate increase in our purchased water and an increase in energy costs, because that is one of the largest M&O costs we have for pumping water. And then the newest, or the new addition here is we created drought rates corresponding to mandatory conservation rates, which are phases 2 through 5. Phase 1 is voluntary. As you all know, that's in effect at all times. This wouldn't apply to the voluntary. So typical single-family usage, I referred to it as typical. This is just a little bit more information on that. We've used California State Department of Water Resources data for that, and also, I believe, AWWA data. But a typical distribution of water usage for single-family homes is estimated at about 66%, 2/3 for irrigation and 34% for personal use. That gives you an idea on a single-family home. And we use census data. A household of 2.8 people uses about 467 gallons of water per day. And of that, again, 312 as outdoor use, 154 gallons for indoor use. And this is how that looks on a pie chart. So this was the schedule of proposed revenue plans. You have the plan that the council directed us to include in the Proposition 218 notice, which is, as we had mentioned before, a maximum. The council can certainly go lower than the 5.444. They just can't go above that without starting the whole process over again. Staff had originally proposed a 5-year plan with 2 5s followed by 3 consecutive years of 4. So 5.5444. Council thought that was a little much and went with the proposed column that you see. We also, just for discussion purposes, included 3 other options. Those are 2 4-year options, one at a first year of 5% followed by 3 consecutive years of 2%, a 4% increase for each of the 4 years, and then we had a 5.43 3-year plan. Now this chart shows you as you go down how that impacts the various issues that we're aiming to address, which is net income, building reserves, and establishing our pay-go capital program. So all of the proposals are Prop 218 compliant, and all of them meet our debt service coverage for the existing bonds that are in place. From there, you see that there's a lot of differences. Let's take the proposed column. That does give us a proposed pay-go capital at 9.7, and that's really for 2 years. And that's a comfortable place to be. You can see that almost immediately we begin to operate. We do operate at positive net income, starting out with $1.5 million, getting up to 4.4 in that last year of the rate structure. Cash reserves, which are in a very much a deficit position right now. You see we begin to climb out of that. And by that, year 4, we're almost to $5 million. Now, the council policy for reserves in water is 11. So you can see that we are well below that, but I can tell you this is a much more comfortable position for me and for the utility to be in. I don't know that necessarily, because folks, you recall we had the same discussion with electric. You know, do you take the huge bite of that apple and try to get all the way back to the 124 million, or is something in the 110, 105 range okay? And I think this is okay right now, considering where we're at. You'll see in the other options going to from left to right there, the 5222 And while you do maintain the pay-go capital, and you are operating a positive net income, and certainly not at the pace you would, you can see that the reserves in that particular scenario just don't quite get there. We remain deficit at the end of the 4-year period, so we're still about $1.4 million in the hole. The 4-year of 4% increases, again, we do operate positive net income. We get that growing up to almost $4 million. We do chip away at the reserve and come up with a slightly less $3.1 million reserve under that scenario. We keep our pay-go at that 9.7 number, which is about $4.8 million a year. That's comfortable. And then the 3-year at 5.43, you see we have a little less money to deal with on the pay-go capital. And we do get out and operate at a positive net income for the 3 years of that. And we get slightly out of the negative on the reserves, just a touch above, a little over $500,000. Here's how it looks on a line graph. This is a little busy, but you'll see that red line across the top is the cash reserve policy. See, we don't quite get there, but under the 5.444, we come to a very comfortable position. I think we right the water operation. We get it going in the right direction. We get our pay-go capital once the bond proceeds have been expended. We climb out of that deficit in the reserves, which is troublesome for me, and we operate at a positive net income. Our community outreach efforts, we held 4 community meetings. We had 48 attendees total, and that's how they broke down. Spar Heights with 18, Police Community Room, Mr. Camargo was at that particular meeting. We had 6, Pacific Edison, Mr. Hale had 7, and President Chan got a large crowd, as large as we've got at the Boy Scouts up in Northwest area. What's the flavor for what we were asked? You attended 3 of those. It was really pretty consistent. Interestingly enough, it wasn't until we got to that last meeting that we had some real direct questions about how the rate impacts the person individually. The other 3 meetings kind of picked around the edges of various things, including development and some other things, but there wasn't a lot of discussion of how the bill was going to impact them. Here's, again, some of the questions. Can our water infrastructure handle the development? Which absolutely it can. We do not transfer any longer, as you know, to the general fund out of the water operation. I'm conserving water. Why do we need a drought charge? Not everybody's conserving water, but at the same time, the explanation of the drought charge being that we have fixed costs at 70%, and 30%, 70% of sales. And when that goes down, we still have to cover our fixed charges. And so we thought the drought rate was a way to do that versus altering the percentage split between fixed and variable. As I think I mentioned to you the last time, just going 60-40 from 30 to 70 was a tremendous impact to the rate. It was too much. I just felt it was too much. And that's in perpetuity. Once you establish that, it goes on. Drought declaration or no drought declaration. We felt with the drought declaration tied directly to the ordinance and to the mandatory phases that it's only in effect as long as those are in effect, and when council pulls back on those, it stops.
Mr. Zern?
Yes.
On the issues and questions that you read. So are these from the public meetings? I noticed that there was also an email box that was established on the website. So, did you also receive questions through the website?
We did.
And are the answers questions?
And we've rolled a lot of those in. These are the main questions and issues that were raised anywhere, even a telephone call, even if somebody caught me on the street and wanted to talk to me. These were really the big ones that people asked, both at the community meetings, online, and in person. And so we just try to roll those in. I'm not going to say this is every single question we had, but this is where we had the majority of the questions and the areas where we had that. Another one that we were asked many times was, how are we dealing with will down and mistake? And you're all aware of that. I won't talk too much about it because it's a legal issue. Ms. Godinez and actually Smarterosian is handling that. Is conservation the reason rates are going up? No. Rates are going up because we didn't achieve what we had needed to achieve with the original rate schedule because of errors by the consultant. And let me mention something else, because it says, how are we dealing with will down and their mistakes? Another question that came up is, how are we ensuring that this doesn't happen again? So, again, I don't know exactly all that went into the last one because the folks, the staff that handled that aren't here any longer. But what we did in this particular case is we put together an internal team of experts. We had legal, we had the city auditor, we had the finance director, and I'm not saying the city, the auditor's office. No, we had the auditor. Her staff was there as well. We had operations, we had customer service, we had IS. So everybody was involved in vetting this and getting their comments in. In addition, we went the extra step of retaining outside legal assistance from a firm that's well known, Michael Colantano, for being an expert in Prop 218 and AB 26 issues, and asked him to review, which he's almost completed his review of that, I believe, Doreen. And so, and I will tell you at this point, everything looks very good. So those are the precautions we've taken. So we've run beta. We've taken this and run it through the billing system. We've looked at it from a finance perspective, from an audit perspective. In fact, I believe the initial audit is complete on the process. Very positive remarks we had back from the city auditor's office. Very similar to the process we followed on the last electric increase, where we really vetted this in-house. We weren't afraid to let any and everybody take a look at this and give us their opinions. So we feel really comfortable. We certainly don't want to make those same mistakes we made before again. So we feel really comfortable with how the processes work both internally and externally. And we've really put Bartle and Wells to the test as well. So they've had to defend almost every single line of their COSA. Other outreach activities, we mailed out the Prop 218 notice as we are required to do, which included an explanation of why we were where we were. It included the proposed rate schedule and included all of the community meeting dates. Again, I say this often, the belts and suspenders approach. We mailed a lot of these out. We mail them out to our account holders. We mail them out to property owners using the county assessor's office information, which is not always really current. So we did have some folks that got multiple mailings. I think we had one that had 80, but I would much rather it doesn't hurt us. The cost is fairly minimal, and it's better that we get the word to them. A lot of interesting things you find out when you have two people that live in the same house, yet the mail goes to both of them. One is the account holder, one is the property owner, and there's different names. So these things occur. We just wanted to make sure that we had everybody covered. We had 3,000 flyers that were distributed and displayed. Public counters, any kind of community event. We urged any of the social groups and other, even non-city organizations that were doing things to get the flyers out, and if we could put them in their businesses, we did that as well. And again, we had flyers to the churches and the community businesses and social organizations. We had press release issued, and our social media folks were constantly updating and getting this out via the website. We had a specific website actually set up for this, but this was, I'm looking at Christina to help me, this was tweeted. This was tweeted and, I don't know, Instagrammed, and it was well saturated in the social media market, and I've just explained to you all that I know about the social media market. We advertised extensively on our own GTV6. We did online advertising for a number of publications, including CV Weekly, the News Press, the Montrose Patch, Asbarez, which is an Armenian language paper. We printed in various local papers, again, multi-languages. We had our meetings all posted, and we had a separate presentation to the Chamber of Commerce, to the executive director and members of her board, to go over what we were proposing. Again, just a summary of options that we have. Those are all related to the proposed 5444 plan. This will fund our capital programs on a pay-go basis once the bond proceeds have been expended. We'll get a net income of 4.3. This is all assuming fourth year of the 4-year plan. We get our cash reserves back up to a positive, close to $5 million. And throughout, as we explained, our debt service obligation is covered.
I have a question on that
Sure.
slide. So for the ending cash reserve, so that's at the end of 17-18.
Uh-huh.
What is the forecast for compliance with the policy and an $11.3 million reserve?
Well, I imagine, I can't say for sure, but the conversation we had when we did the electric rates is that we might come back separately to talk about the cash reserve policy for the electric operation. Just to talk about it, see where council's comfortable, update it, see where I'm comfortable as the GM, where staff may be comfortable. I imagine we'll do the same thing for water. So I think there'll be a discussion. What the number will be, I don't know. My sense is when we talk to the bonding agencies, because there's a little something there too, you want to make sure that you have a certain reserve that offsets some particular time of operating expenses. So we'll do some survey there. But my sense is we'll probably have that conversation with water as with electric on whether they want to review that policy and think about changing it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know that 5 million is a good number, and I don't know that 11.3 million is a good number. And it may be somewhere in between those two numbers that ends up being a little more comfortable for us. But I think compared to where we are today, this is good. This is going in the very right direction. And again, this is just over the other option plans, the 4 years of 4%. This gets us to very similar to where you were with the 5 and 3/4, just a little bit less, almost $4 million in net income, and a little less than about $1 million less or so, $1.5 million less actually in the cash reserves. And then the 3-year plan, which gets us $3.8 million in positive net income at the end of or in that final third year. Pay goes a little bit short there, so you can see that takes you down to close to half of what we had in the other plans. And that'll impact our ability to do capital work. And while we get to a positive number in our cash reserves, you can see it's just barely above the line at $600,000. Oh, and the final, the 522. This is the one that really doesn't quite get us. It gets us the pay-go, but it gets us positive net income at the end of the 4 years. But that's significantly less than the other proposals. And I think the glaring thing here is it doesn't get us to the positive number in the reserves. We're still about $1.4 million the hole at the end of the 4-year plan. So at this point, our recommendation will be for the 4-year plan of 5.444, and the rate hearing, the council meeting where this will be heard is July 22nd, 6 p.m. in these chambers. And with that, Madam President and members of the commission, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I do want to mention one thing. Thank you so much for going over these common questions and what your answers are, and the things that you mentioned to prevent that from happening again. The wrong structure and the wrong data use and all that. That all sounds really good. I just want to also mention that we need to review the revenues by class more often. It has to be done every month. And, the costs and the revenues, because it sounds a little funny to me that it took like at least a year or two to realize that the whole class was collecting a lot more money. Mm-hmm. So my request is that those numbers need to be looked at more often. By class, the revenues, so, I understand this time we're doing a lot to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. But just so, we can do our part. And of course, the public, the ratepayers should definitely voice their complaints if they see a 300, 400, 500 increase in their bills. That's ridiculous.
And President Chen, I absolutely agree with you, and we will watch that. I don't expect that'll be a problem this time around. Right. But I also will tell you, keep in mind, What happened in this particular case is because we were selling more water than we had predicted, and because we were over collecting so much on the fire line charges, that somewhat shadowed the revenue overall revenue decrease, because we didn't exactly look at it at class by first. We were looking at it at total, and it wasn't until that started to manifest itself that we saw that. But in this particular case, we were collecting so much more on one end and selling more water than we had predicted that it clouded a little bit our ability to see right away that we were under collecting.
Right.
But as, again, we saw that. So, but point well taken. We'll be watching that very closely.
And I understand that in the past that might not have happened due to shortage of staff, or just people retiring and people taking on so many other assignments. But I think that should be a function, whether it's in rates or in finance. We need to see where the revenues are coming in, whether they're going along the projected path, or all of a sudden there's a spike. We need to understand why.
I agree with you.
Okay, great, thanks. Any other comments?
Just one question. So on the July 22nd meeting, a council meeting at which this issue will be addressed, so is there public awareness being done to help folks realize that meeting is taking place? There was quite a bit of work done to make the community aware of the public meetings that were held to discuss the rate increase. So wondering if any of those same activities will be used to create awareness for the July 22nd meeting.
Yes, and we have been doing that as we've gone along. Certainly that's been part of my presentation at the meetings we've been at. We've got it on our website. As I said, it didn't mention it up there, but we have a dedicated website or dedicated link on our website to the proposed water rate structure. We'll be getting out likely, because we've got a little bit of time, so we can get out even more information on that if we need to. I wasn't sure if we were going to put this in the next bill cycle, but yeah, absolutely, we'll do all we can to make that known. And I believe, Doreen, that was in the Prop 218 notice as well. So it's in the official notice that went out, not just the community meetings, but also the actual hearing date. It has to, now that I talked myself through that.
Any comment?
So I guess one of the things that's a little bit troubling to me, or gives me some pause in sort of formulating a recommendation for the council or deciding which of the rate options to pick, is that I guess in the context of this presentation, I don't know what GWP sacrifices by picking 4444 or 543 over 5444. So in other words, what are we sacrificing by reducing the capital? And I get it from an aggregate kind of, this is where we get 3.9 million income as opposed to 4.37. But what does that mean in real terms for the utility?
I think Commissioner Hale, when you look at the PAYGO, and that really gets impacted by that 3-year 543 plan, and it's pretty close to half of what the other rate scenarios have put aside. That'll significantly impact our capital program. And I think getting that back in motion with the bond and keeping that momentum is very important. I think our infrastructure is in very good shape. But like all water infrastructures, it is older, and so you have to keep pace with it and keep replacing the phases as you go down. So that would give me a little bit of pause if we had to sacrifice there. I have to tell you, you have a negative balance in reserves, so that's something you're still going to have to address at some point. What does that mean? Do we have to then look at the end of 4 years or at the end of 3 years another rate proposal on that horizon? What will that be? I think with the 5444, our plan was that got us to what I call that very comfortable level, and then we could look at hopefully establishing future rate increases, and I know I've talked to you about this before in relation to electric, of what I call manageable. Keeping pace with whatever the case may be, the economy, the regulatory environment, the environmental environment, so that we're looking at, 1.5s and 2s and 2.5, something that's a little bit more manageable instead of having to come back with multiple years of 5s and 4s or even 8s and 7s in the case of electricity, of the electric.
Okay.
I remember when the last set of rates went through, and that last year was 5%. And so with this proposal, we're picking up that 5%.
Correct.
And we're just moving forward with another 4.
Correct.
Given everything that I've seen and I've heard, and I understand, the mistakes and all, I think this is reasonable, and I would feel comfortable recommending this, moving this. So, and how about my other commissioners?
Mr. Hale, did you have a remaining concern?
Well, I mean, I hear you loud and clear on getting us to the reserve fund policy and getting us to a point of positive reserve instead of negative reserve. I think that's a huge risk. What I guess is my question is a matter of scale, right? It's do we get to 600K, do we get to 3.1 million, or do we get to 4.7 million? And we're also talking about revisiting the entire reserve fund policy of whether 11.3 million reserve is appropriate.
Right.
Maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower. It's unknown at this point.
Right, and that's my sense is, and this is just my sense and speculation, it's probably somewhere in between that 4.7, the highest scenario we have, and 11, but I don't know exactly where, and we'll have to do some analysis to come up with some other, again, what are the recommendations of bonding agencies? What are other utilities doing in regards to reserves? So yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Is 3.1 okay? If 4.7 is okay, is 3.1 okay? My sense is 600,000 still gives me a little bit of pause. You got to remember that if something goes wrong, having that money in the bank is critical. And while water is a different animal than electric, because something goes wrong in electric, it usually is big. Our water infrastructure is in pretty good shape. And when I say the big parts of it, the reservoirs and the pump stations, are all doing very well, and we're very comfortable with them. But something could happen. Something could happen, and that gives me a little bit of pause, knowing that we don't have that cushion of reserves in the bank. So I don't have a perfect number for you either, Mr. Hale, but again, I guess you could say the situation we're in, anything positive is better than where we are today. Because, you could say, Steve, well, what happens if something breaks tomorrow and we got a problem? But my sense is that, maybe 11 is too much, but 4.7 I'm comfortable with. That's just me.
And, for me, I'm thinking if we go with 5444 and at the end we realize that we can cut back a little bit, the next rate increase doesn't have to be that high.
Or doesn't have to be at all.
At all.
You could take a year off.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's how I'm looking at it. So I'm comfortable with this.
I would never, and I think I mentioned this at the meetings, I get a little bit anxious when you go, okay, let's take 3 years or 4 years off, because it always seems that then you're catching up.
Mm-hmm.
But if we get to a point where we're doing really well, maybe we don't need to have a rate increase
1 year.
immediately the next year, but we can do it 2 years from now. And I think any relief we can provide is good. So I agree with you.
So, yeah, I guess with that in mind, I would be supportive of
Okay.
Commissioner Chan's motion to support the 5444 rate increase.
So that's actually the motion.
Yeah, because technically,
Oh.
procedurally, she can't move as the chair unless she passes the gavel to someone else. So,
I would move the 5444 rate increase as the commission's position for the council to consider.
And I'll second.
I'll say aye.
Want her to take
Aye.
roll call?
we could take roll call, sure.
Commissioner Camargo,
Aye.
Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hale.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next item, please.
5, oral communications.
Nope. Next item.
6, agenda forecast.
Okay.
Well, Madam President, we're taking a well-deserved holiday in July. Although we did get this meeting in, and I'm very appreciative that you could work your schedules around this so we could get that done. So upcoming in August, we kind of go back to what has become our regular updates with water conservation. Atine will be here again to give you where the state and MWD are coming from. Utility modernization update. So Mr. Keenan will be here to give you where we're at with that. Energy risk mandate management update, I think, yeah, we'll definitely have something to come back to you with, even if it's just to talk about our software program that we're putting in place. The commission had asked at one point for updates about the water operation, and I think this really came from the fact that we had zeroed out the capital and deferred some of our programs, and there was a concern of how that was impacting the water operation. So we can continue to do that. However, I think we've really kind of opened that book up here when we talk about the water rates of where we're at. We're good where we are right now today, but I think we want to make sure that we maintain that momentum. So to the extent you're still interested in hearing about that, we can certainly do it, but I'll leave that up to you. And then our strategic plan. So we should be ready to come back to you with what our proposed strategic plan. We gave you a brief overview several months ago, but we should be able to come back and show you that. And then again, we have, it looks like September is very much the same. It's our regular updates, and that pretty much goes on up into January, when we would talk to you a little bit about the proposed Grayson repowering effort. That's kind of something that isn't on our regular list. In November, we have a water bond update, and I think that was, as I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to come back to you and just tell you where we were with projects related to the bond, how we were doing in spending the proceeds of the bond. So whatever your pleasure.
Okay.
This looks good. We can hold on to this. We will have that full agenda ready for August.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask that in the context of the Water Service Division update at our next meeting, we have a recap of the council's action on the rates and maybe an outlay of the capital plans based on that rate structure.
Excellent idea. That's great. We certainly can do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we also, last meeting, talked, I think within the context of the Grayson power plant repowering options, a conversation about the overall energy portfolio. I'm not seeing that on the forecast.
I think we got on the September meeting, there's the
Resource mix.
and RPS update.
Yes. So
Okay.
that last item there, exactly, that will be a discussion on the portfolio.
Got it, thank you. And given the timing of the legislation, September also is the best time to revisit the legislative update?
And we have that there.
Yes, September 1st. Mm-hmm.
Is September the best time to do that? Because I think that the last week of session is sometime in August, when the legislature turns into bill factory mode.
We can move it to the August 4th
I
meeting.
think that'd probably be a good
Yeah.
idea.
I don't have anything else.
I do have a question. This may not be related to the agenda. Annual report. When was the last time we completed a annual report?
President Chan, we do an annual report every year.
Okay.
I'm not, is that something that we
Are they
previously
on
presented
the
to the
website?
commission? We can make sure you get a copy of that.
Yeah, we have not been getting them.
Okay. And that's related, that's our obligation to have that in, that plan put together. It isn't related to the strategic plan because we're kind of revamping that whole system. But I know I've written 2 statements to open up the annual report for the last 2 years. I've seen one. I think the other one is on the way.
Okay.
So we'll make
Okay.
sure you get those.
That'd be great. Mhm.
That's right. Tomorrow's the start of the new fiscal
Start of the year.
Fiscal year new.
Fiscal year. Mhm. Yeah. But I'm sure we won't be able to get the report next week,
No.
right?
The holiday you don't hope for fireworks.
Okay. Any other comments on the agenda? No? Okay. Next item, please. Oh,
7,
adjournment.
adjournment.
Do you have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.